Now that all of us are thinking, we will dive right into the topic without further ado. Before that, just sharing the format with all of us, the panelists will make their opening remarks, and this will be followed by a panel discussion. I will first introduce Mr. Vikram Sampath. He is a Bangalore-based historian who has been doing a lot of different things throughout his life. First, he was in the corporate sector, and then he started following his passion, writing books, and he wrote 6 books. And the 6 books are Splendors of Royal Mysore, The Untold Story of Vodayars, My Name is Gauhar Jan, The Life and Times of a Musician, Voice of the Veena, a biography, and Women of the Records. His latest are the 2-volume biography on Veer Savarkar, Savarkar, Echoes from a Forgotten Past, and Savarkar, A Contested Legacy, both of which have gone on to become national bestsellers. Dr. Sampath was recently conferred the honor of being elected as a Fellow of the United Kingdom's prestigious Royal Historical Society. He was awarded the Sahitya Academy's first Yuva Puraskar in English Literature and the ASRC Award for Excellence in Historical Research in New York for his book on Gauhar Jan. The book has also been adopted as a play, Gauhar, by Lilette Dubey, and is being adapted to a Bollywood film by Ashutosh Gowarikar. Dr. Sampath was among the 4 writers and artists to be selected as a writer-in-residence at the Rashtrapati Bhavan in 2015. He holds a doctorate in history and music from the University of Queensland, Australia, and was a senior research fellow at the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, New Delhi. He is also an Aspen Global Leadership Fellow and an Eisenhower Global Fellow 2021. An engineer, mathematician from BITS Pilani, and an MBA in finance from SPJ in Mumbai, Dr. Sampath is also a trained Carnatic vocalist. Talk about diversity. He has established the Archive of Indian Music, India's first digital sound archive for vintage recordings. Before we invite you to make your opening remarks, I will also introduce Mr. Vivek Agnihothri. Popularly known as an author and a national award-winning filmmaker, Vivek Ranjan Agnihothri's work goes beyond just these 2 roles. He serves as a member on India's Censor Board for Films, the Central Board of Film Certification, and is a cultural representative of Indian cinema at the Indian Council for Cultural Relations. Having spoken at many prestigious platforms such as TEDx, the Harvard University Conclave, the World Hindu Congress, and Niti Aayog, among many others, he is a popular content creator who regularly publishes podcasts, videos, and interviews on topics closest to him: the Indian civilization, its culture, and socio-political issues. Earlier, he has served as the secretary of the Indian Film Directors Association and the Screenwriters Association of India. For his film The Tashkent Files in 2019, Mr. Agnihothri won the National Film Award for the Best Screenplay. His books, Urban Naxals and Who Killed Shastri, were some of the most successful books of 2017 and 2020 respectively. The Tashkent Files was also included as a case study in the official curriculums of IIM Ahmedabad and Mumbai University. The term urban Naxalism is now used across the board and has been accepted as a political reality of the day. His latest film, The Kashmir Files, went on to become a blockbuster in spite of facing initial resistance from theaters. He is the founder of I Am Buddha Foundation, an NGO focused on training and empowering youth in creative thinking. He comes from a family of freedom fighters, has a degree in planning from the Bhopal University, is an advertising veteran with a degree in advertising from the prestigious Indian Institute of Mass Communication, New Delhi. We are delighted to have you among us, Agnihothri ji. I now invite Vikram Sampath ji to make his opening remarks, followed by Vivek Agnihothri ji.
Hari Om, pranams to all the eminent guests, Param Pujya Swami Mitranand ji, Vivek ji, all the distinguished eminences in the audience, my young friends, ladies and gentlemen. It truly is a great privilege and honor to be a part of this historic occasion where history was made today with the release of these new history books. While I was sitting there, I was just thinking that, if these books were there when I was in school, and I won't reveal when because that will also reveal my age then. So I would probably not have spent most of the history classes kneeling down outside class because that was how it was spent then. To be honest, I hated history as a subject in school, the way it was taught. My history teacher might have a little bit of a problem, thinking that today I'm a historian in India. The boring manner in which it was taught to us as to, learning by rote, who succeeded whom, which wars were fought, extraneous and stupid details which are of no relevance to anybody. So that really made me, loathe the subject. But then destiny had its own path, and this is where I am today. But then in my growing up years, I also realized, what George Orwell had said, English novelist. He had said, "He who controls the past controls the future." The importance of this subject was only made known to me as I was growing up, that history is not just a subject which made me kneel down outside class, but history is also a subject which gives us an identity as a nation, as a people, as a civilization. And it is this importance which is why it is so contested, so heavily contested. There are legacy wars. Everything that we see, you switch on your news channels, you have raucous debates only on topics and characters of the past and historical themes. The way, histories of colonies like India, in this long wave of colonization that we have suffered, one is, of course, colonization is you use the raw materials of another country and also use that same country as the market for your finished products. There's also political subjugation of the colony. But there's a third dimension to it, which is cultural subjugation. The first two are relatively easier to shrug off through mass movements, through struggles. You can get off economic and political subjugation. But the cultural subjugation of the mind, that takes a long time to shrug off and decolonize yourself. Because the colonized society has been subliminally made to believe that you are inferior, you are only being born to be ruled by others. So our history, the manner in which it was told to us, right from the myth of that Aryan invasion theory, down to every invasion and conquest, as Swamiji mentioned, our history books are like a litany or a laundry list of only wars we lost. Right from Alexander the Great, he was the great, but not porous. Then on to the Arab invasion, to the Battle of Tarain, the battles of Panipat, the Anglo-Maratha, Anglo-Sikh wars, Anglo-Mysore wars. You just look at your own, textbooks. Indians were seen as a set of losers. And this is also a colonial construct where the colonial master was trying to tell us that you are not fit to rule yourself. You need somebody from outside. Right from the Aryan times, you had someone coming from outside, giving you a sense of culture, giving you a sense of civilization. And so it's very natural that we also are one in this long list of invaders who have come to your country. And we have somewhere subliminally believed, in this construct. And there are numerous fault lines that exist, as I see, in the historiography of our country. I was recently going through the NCERT books, Story of Our Past or so is the title, class 6 to 9, the same classes which have been revised here. And it was appalling, to say the least. The first brush of an Indian child with the story of her country is through the history textbook. Most often after school, very few people opt for the subject. But in those, few years that you know about your country, the story of India is told almost in third person. It's almost like you're listening to the story of some other country. Somebody else is telling you, and it's not about that sense of ownership and belonging. Along with that, there is this spectacular disconnect from your own roots. Where you're constantly made to feel apologetic about your past. You're constantly made to feel ashamed, inferior, the same colonial mindset. And a negation of India's civilizational greatness is almost seen like a fashion statement. It's so hip and cool to say, India was no good in these several centuries. That becomes a very important theme that comes through these books, and I was quite shocked to see that this is what has been in vogue for the last 15, 20 years. So an entire generation has grown up reading this kind of balderdash, if I may use the word. And somewhere we've been very faithful adherents of that infamous Macaulay's Minutes of 1835, where Lord Macaulay, while talking about the minutes on education, had said that the goal of English education is to create a class of interpreters. They're just interpreters between us, the rulers, and the millions whom we govern, who are Indians only in blood and color, but are English in their morals, tastes, opinions, and intellect. So very faithfully, we somehow follow that even to this day. Another aspect which is shocking that many Indians, educated Indians, we believe somewhere, is that India was never a nation. It was a group of disparate people who were fighting with each other. It is only the British who gave us the sense of nationhood. They stitched together or hammered together a country which was otherwise at war with each other. There were caste differences, class differences, political differences, one kingdom fighting against the other. And it is the British who unified us. In fact, Sir John Strachey, a British administrator who was in charge of training the ICS, Imperial Civil Service officers, in the 1880s he used to say, the first and foremost thing to know about India is that there is not and there was never an India. So that sort of a message is something even today, so many educated Indians, as a matter of fact, they speak this, that we were not a nation. So nation and a nation state may be defined by boundaries, by laws, but a nation is a common shared sense of cultural as well as emotional connect with a cultural entity, with a territorial entity. And in that, the manner in which our epics talk about, our itihasas, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Puranas, or the Vishnu Purana, which talks about a nation very, very clearly. Uttaram yat samudrasya himadraschaiva dakshinam varshatad bharatam nama bharati yatra santati. What more explicit, definition do you need of a nation? The landmass which is south of the Himalayas and north of the oceans, that land, that country, Varsha, is called Bharata, and its children are called Bharatiyas. Similarly, the Janapadas, the Bhishma Parva of the Mahabharata talks in almost 70 verses of the various Janapadas, the various geographies, and this land is known as the Karma Bhumiyam, a land of action. So, despite all this, and despite the way foreign travelers, whether it was Fahian, whether it's Hyun Sang, or the Arab travelers who describe this as Al-Hind, despite the manner in which there was a common unified sphere of cultural circulation, which someone like an Adi Shankaracharya in his Digvijayas across the country, in the manner in which he established the mutts at the 4 cardinal points, south, north, east, west, all of them knitted together. He need not have done that. He was from Kerala, he could have set up something there. But the very fact that he unified this entire landmass culturally, spiritually, and did not face resistance, that itself showed that this concept of a nation is beyond just rules and laws and a constitution and all of that. India is a civilizational state. It's a civilizational nation which far predates British colonialism and also the framing of the Indian constitution. A few other fault lines, I'll quickly finish, is one, of course, as Swamiji mentioned, stories of only losses. Where are the heroes? Where are the people who put their resistance? A forthcoming book that I'm writing is about these very unsung heroes and heroines of India. Lalitaditya Muktapida of Kashmir, who ensured that the Arabs were defeated and thrown away from India. Why is it that the Arabs could not conquer the rest of India beyond Sindh? We've never paused to think about that. Suhail Dev from Uttar Pradesh, who at the Battle of Bharech ensured that the Ghori army was defeated. So between Ghazni and Ghori, there's a huge gap of over 100 years. Why did the Turkish armies never keep coming back to India? Because there was that resistance. Rani Abbakka from my state in Karnataka, who ensured that the Portuguese were dealt a death blow. In neighboring Kerala, you had Marthanda Varma, who ensured that the Dutch East India Company in the Battle of Kolachal in 1731, they were completely decimated, so much so that the Dutch collapsed as a par, worldwide. So many such, Lachit Borphukan from Assam, Velu Nachiyar from Tamil Nadu, the Cholas who ensured that there was a civilizational and cultural outreach of India to the southeastern countries, Rani Naiki Devi in Gujarat, who defeated Muhammad Ghori, a Chalukyan Solanki woman ruler, who defeated Ghori so badly, he was so embarrassed that he never came to Gujarat again. So where are all these multiple stories? Bappa Rawal, Raja Dahar, Rana Kumbha, who never got defeated. The second largest, longest wall after the Great Wall of China is the Kumbhalgarh Fort, which he built in Rajasthan. And these are ideas which our history books don't even talk about. It's quite a, shocking thing. Similarly, several of the dark elements of our history, we somehow shy away from talking about that. When it comes to invasions, when it comes to the genocide that the civilization faced. Will Durant had said the Islamic conquest of India is one of the bloodiest stories of human history, not just Indian, but human history. But do our books talk commensurate about that? Historian K.S. Lal had mentioned that between 1000 CE and 1525, the population of this subcontinent fell by 8 to 9 crores. 8 to 9 crores were actually massacred just in those 500 years of the early Delhi Sultanate time and the early invasions of Islam. 60 lakh Jews being massacred during the Second World War, we call that as a Holocaust. So what do we call 8 to 9 crores of Indians, Hindus, Buddhists, Jains who were all massacred during those 500 years? What do we call that? We do not call that the Holocaust. Sitaram Goyalji, in his seminal work, talks about 40,000 temples, at the least, it's an underestimate, 40,000 temples destroyed during the entire foreign invasion of India. Where are these temples lost? Do we even talk? Forget reclaiming them. That's a long story. One temple which is of primal importance, we had to fight in the Supreme Court and judiciary for hundreds of years. But all these temples, at least can we acknowledge that this is what happened? The sex slavery that the women of this country had to face during these invasions. 4 lakh plus women. There was a saying in Ghazni, in Afghanistan, that Duktare Hindustan Nilame Do Dinar. The daughters of Hindustan are auctioned here for 2 dinars each. So that was there's a tower there where people, the women folk from Hindustan were taken away and auctioned for the sex trade and slavery of the masses there. So where are all these stories and why do we not tell that? We have this fear that somehow talking about these will upset current social circumstances. It will make today's society uncomfortable, or in some way communities today, particularly say the Indian Muslims, are in some way responsible for the atrocities of Ghazni, Ghori, Aurangzeb, Tipu Sultan and all these tyrants, which is not true. I think the need is to dehyphenate today's people from these invasions of the past and also use history as a tool to ensure that these atrocities are never repeated again. And these are not some medieval tortures and things that happened. It's happening right now as we speak in our neighborhood, in our country as well. Vivek ji has spoken about the Kashmiri genocide. We've had what happened during partition. We know what's happening in Bengal today, in Afghanistan, whether it's the destruction of the Bamiyan Buddhas and the persecution of the minorities in our neighboring countries, and their steady decline of their population, percentages. All this shows this is not some Delhi Sultanate that we're talking of. The Delhi Sultanate is very much alive. It is happening right around us. So we need to all the more use history as the tool to dehyphenate today's Muslims, saying they are not your heroes. If you really want people of your own faith as icons, there are enough. There is Ras Khan, there is Rahim, there is Dara Shikoh, there is Sant Shishunal Sharif, there is APJ Abdul Kalam. There are several people who can be used as icons. To make any group comfortable, you don't need to whitewash atrocities of the past. You don't have to, and mind you, the edifice of national unity cannot rest on the shaky foundations of whitewashed history. Every time that happens, Every time we think that by whitewashing, by putting things under the carpet, you can put a lot of things under the carpet, the muck under the carpet, put deodorant on it and think things are okay. But truth has a way of resurfacing. And every time it resurfaces, there are fault lines created. There are conflicts created. That's why we saw what happened in Ayodhya. We see all this renaming of cities, the trouble that goes on all the time because we have not made peace with our past. We have not made peace with these atrocities of the past. World over, where there are Holocaust museums. Holocaust Museum is not a place where you go and pledge that let us do another Holocaust. It is a place where you go and also heal from the wounds of the past and also take a pledge that these mistakes of the past will never repeat. As Mr. Gopal Swami said, history repeats itself only because no one was listening to it the first time. So I think it's very important that we acknowledge and heal from these mistakes and make peace. And I think these books are the first step in that direction. What the government of India has not managed to do, the Chinmaya mission and the Vidya Bharati have managed to. So they deserve a huge round of applause for this. Finally, I'd like to say that, for everything in India, there is a very unique Indian way of life. So even in the larger vision, did our ancestors have a vision for what history and history writing should be? What is the purpose of history? There is a famous shloka which says, Dharmartha kama mokshanam upadesha samanvitam kathayuktam puravrittam itihasam tachakshmate. Kathayuktam, in a story form, the puravrittam or narratives of the past have to be told in a story form in which will aid in the pursuit of the four limbs of dharma, artha, kama, moksha, and that is called itihasa. Itihasa itself translating it into it thus happened. So there's a very, very clear Indic vision of what history's goal should be. There has to be that didactic component, that upadesha, that moral message to society. That is very, very important. So keeping that in mind, I'm sure these books have been written with that lofty Indic vision of what history is, and it is India's answer to what historiography is, not the Western positivist empirical study of history which German historian Leopold von Ranke and others actually evolved. So my hearty congratulations to the Chinmaya Mission and Vidya Bharati, and I do hope that these books become the mainstay not only of your schools but schools across India, so that students like me no longer kneel down outside class in history classes. Thank you.
Now, Vivek ji, your opening remarks, please.
Good morning, everyone here in Chennai, respected Swami Mitranand ji, Vikram ji, and all the distinguished teachers, and the bright future of India. And the best part is nobody's sleeping. I am been noticing everybody's eyes. Not even one student has been sleeping. So thank you for being awake. Yesterday I was talking to somebody last night, and he was telling me the history of how the name of this city was changed from Madras to Chennai. When I was studying, we used to call it Madras. And everybody from South was a Madrasi. If you see Bollywood films of that time, anybody who had a tilak was a Madrasi. I am from that generation. Imagine. Some of the greatest of scholars, filmmakers, storytellers, politicians, even social reformers, all of them used to call everybody Madrasi. That is the kind of nation we have grown up in. Therefore, it is a moment of great satisfaction when you come to an event and where everybody calls it Bharat and not India. I am really waiting for a day when there will be no India, there will be only Bharat. When I studied, like Vikram said, we were only told what is wrong with this nation? You have caste issues, you have women empowerment issues, you are a dirty, filthy country, you are weak people, you didn't know how to fight, you have no courage. That's how I grew up believing that everybody else in this world, yes, we are spiritual, we had some great people, Ram and Krishna and great gods or great people. But in our DNA, we are weak people, we were never a great country. Until the time I went to shoot my last film, The Tashkent Files, in Uzbekistan. And it was in Samarkand, the guide, the local guide who could translate the language, and he was taking us to see locations to shoot. And we went to Temur Lung's tomb, Dargah, whatever it is, And he told the story. He said that Temur conquered almost all the nations in this region, and his countrymen, they were giving him the title of the emperor, and he refused to accept it. He said, I can never be the emperor until I conquer Hind. What does it mean? It means somebody who was called emperor believed that there was a nation which was the strongest nation in the world, and without conquering it, he cannot be an emperor. And he used the word Hind. What does it mean? That we are all, anybody who is from this soil is from Hind, means he's a Hindu. Where is the debate? There cannot be any debate. On one hand, we learn that it was sin, therefore it became Hind. If it became Hind, then everybody who lives, like anybody who lives in America is an American. Anybody who lives here is a Hindu. So it's a fake debate we have created. And then, how did he conquer? He was not interested in ruling India. I may be wrong, but this is what I was told. I mean, this is a popular folk tale in Uzbekistan. How did he conquer India? Then he got an army, huge. They say it's like the largest army of the world. And then he conquered, came via Kashmir, then Punjab, Haryana, and he came to Delhi in one night. It is written also there in a plaque. It says that as a glorification of Temur, that in one night, he killed 100,000 people. And on his way back, he burned villages after villages after villages. His interest was not in ruling India. His interest was in destroying this nation, because there cannot be more powerful nation than Uzbekistan. That's what the history is taught over there. It's so unfortunate that an invader, a tyrant, who killed 100,000 people in one night, even if it is exaggeration, he must have killed thousands of people. At that time, population was not so huge. 100,000 people in one night. He destroyed villages after villages, temples after temples, ruined everything. And it is such a sad commentary. It's such a kalank on our historians and our education system that one of the topmost stars of this country calls his child Temur. Not because he is anti-India or anti-Hindu, because he is not even aware. He has learned the greatness of Temur. That's why he thinks Temur is a hero. But he doesn't realize somebody's hero is also somebody's villain, because he has grown up learning only about Islamic heroes. He was never taught about our heroes, the real heroes of this nation. Who's your hero? Somebody who protects you. Somebody who fights for your dignity. Somebody who fights for your honor. Hero is not somebody who's killing only bad people. Hero, somebody who protects you. That's why Rama is a hero. That's why Krishna is a hero. And in my mind, Swamiji, Vikram, anybody who's trying to contribute to protect the honor and dignity of this great civilization is a Hindu hero. Dr. Kalam, Rahim, these are all Hindu heroes. And which is why it is so important to read the history of our heroes. Second thing, Swamiji introduced me as somebody who's researching on history. I am not researching on history, that's left for people like Vikram. I am researching on what the future of India is going to be. History comes in that context. Why Kashmir becomes so important? Just see the conversation before the Kashmir files and after the Kashmir files. Before the Kashmir files, I have been giving speeches for last 10 years, almost 10, 15, 20 days in a month, so I know how the reactions have changed. Before the Kashmir files, wherever I went, students, I'm not talking about matured people because matured people get little corrupt, but students are very innocent. Everywhere students spoke to me as if Kashmir is one conflict zone outside of India. A lot of students used to tell me, sir, why are we wasting money on army? Why this khich-khich? Chhod do na usko, let it go, so that we live peacefully. And most of the students, I have this research, means real sample in written forms from schools and colleges. Most of the students believed that Kashmir was an Islamic region and Hindus have illegally captured it, which is true. And most of this survey was done in North India and Western India. That's what they believed. Nobody had any pride in Kashmir, as if it's somebody like everybody from South was Madrasi. Similarly, anybody who's from Kashmir is a Muslim. But after Kashmir files, wherever I go, students say, sir, there is no way Kashmir can be separated from India. Because they realized that most of the knowledge which they are getting about Ayurveda, Upanishads, Panini, Patanjali, most of it is coming from Kashmir. Another thing, if you do not know, Kashi. In India, the general education system makes you believe that Kashi has been the only epicenter of Hindu thought or Hindu education, which is not true. In Kashi, after graduating or post-graduating, students in Gurukuls were made to take 3 steps towards in the direction of Kashmir before taking their degree. Because the highest seat of education was there. Nobody ever understood the importance of Kerala and Kashmir, how we are connected through Advaita or Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya. This is the most wonderful land on this planet for a variety of reasons. One reason, that we have organically evolved. Our knowledge system has evolved with experimenting with the life and the society. We have not gone and conquered some other land, captured it, and taken their resource and said, now it is ours and therefore this is part of this evolution. We are like a continuous joint family system. And which is why we are the only society anywhere in the world which has Kul Gurus. What is this Kul Guru? It is a continuation of a knowledge system, of a tradition, of a heritage. Okay, it must have started from there and slowly it is coming in like this. Today, no child talks about Kulguru. The same child, when he goes and joins Google in USA, he, with a lot of pride, he talks about founding fathers of USA. But you don't take pride in the founding fathers of your own knowledge system, knowledge cycle. We have given to, I always say, what is the difference between us and the West? And why West can never understand us? Though we can understand the West, they cannot understand. The reason is, while the West was busy in conquering geographical lands and looting somebody else's property and wealth, at that time, we were conquering our minds. We were trying to understand our relationship with the cosmos. We were trying to find the meaning of this Srishti and what is our role in this Srishti. And eventually we realized that we are all one. We are Srishti, Tattvamasi. You are that. The power you think about, that infinite power you think about, or that ultimate truth which you think about is you, provided you realize it. Therefore, the meaning and purpose of life is to realize yourself and do not waste your life unrealized. And this is the knowledge this world is slowly understanding. Science at least is understanding. In quantum physics they are understanding that the power of the smallest particle is equal to the entire energy of the world. And which is why when you go to the biggest particle lab of the world, in the CERN lab in Switzerland, as you enter, there is a huge statue of Shiva in cosmic dance, in Tandav Nritya. And the cosmic dance of Shiva is, when you are static, you are dynamic. When you are dynamic, you are static. When you are there, you are not there. When you are not there, you are there. That's exactly what the quantum physics says. The advanced side of quantum physics. Scientists have started realizing it. But it is very, very important now that we, our own people, realize. Whenever I have realized, we talk about oppression. There are two things everybody talks about. In India, there is a lot of oppression. Who's doing whose oppression? Let's face this in a very honest manner. The biggest conflict in India is told Hindu-Muslim. And everybody avoids talking about this. But in day-to-day life, if you see, every single day you have to interact with somebody who's not from your faith. And this kind of interaction between diversity or diverse faiths, you will see only in this country, nowhere else in the world. In America, they say we are diverse. How are they diverse? They have got Chinese locality, they have got Indian locality, they have all kinds of food and localities, but nobody interacts with anybody. But in India, we interact on day-to-day basis. And that is the greatness of Hindu culture and civilization. Because we say, okay, you are different, but no problems. Housewives, on daily basis, they go shopping. They don't care who's selling what. Then who's creating this conflict? Average Indians don't create this conflict. Bharatiyas never create this conflict. India creates this conflict. Today, India's biggest problem is that we divided India and Pakistan, but at the same time, we also divided India and Bharat. We left the intellectual power, the political power, the financial power in the hands of India. And if you look as a pyramid, if India is a pyramid, you will see the base, that the huge, huge masses, that is Bharat, and it's always told by India what's wrong with you and why you should correct yourself, and you are weak, you don't have courage. In case of Kashmir also, everybody knew that there was a genocide. They were killed, raped, and tortured in the name of religion, yet the spokespersons of India kept telling them, you had no courage and you ran away. Which is why I made the Kashmir Files. Which is why I was telling Swamiji, my biggest ambition in life, if you go to YouTube, history of Christianity, history of Islam, history of this, history of that, everything you will find, but you won't find the history of the oldest, longest, continuous civilization of the world. Nobody has made it. And if you go by the Darwin's definition, that whoever survives the longest is the strongest and is the victor, if you go by that definition of science, then we are the only surviving civilization, then we are the strongest and we are the best. No dispute on this. We survived the biggest of the invaders, biggest of the tyrants, biggest of the colonizers. We were ruled for 1,000 years. We are the only society in the history of humanity which was ruled for 1,000 years by the minority. And look at our greatness. When we found independence, we said, even you can have equal rights. I think it's time to tell the history of Bharat, because in my mind there is no India. India is the most fake story. Every young student should take a pledge to correct the narrative against Bharat. Pick up the greatest values of Bharat, spread that all over the world. Look at your mother. I am telling you, the only inspiring thing, don't have to be an intellectual and read big books of history. Just look at your mother. Every single Bharatiya Ma is a walking, living example of sacrifice, tyag. She goes hungry, she doesn't buy new sarees, she doesn't do anything for herself. And still, without any money, without any resources, all her life, she sees the dream of surviving the hardships to see the day when her children go wherever they go and they become able. And that is the reason wherever we go, people say that yes, Indians can be trusted. This is the biggest quality. There is no bigger trait. The highest trait of anybody's character is that you can be trusted. Trusted means you have integrity. What you say, you do. That is real humanity. The humanity is, the fundamental principle of humanity is that we can trust each other. And the whole world is suffering from trust deficit. And therefore, I think all the young people who are here, take a pledge, you are in the right place. Learn about Bharat, correct it wherever things have gone wrong, and take a lot of pride in the tyag of all our mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters who ensured that we live in a free land, in a great land, and the world's most evolved and spiritual land. Thank you very much.
Keep your questions very crisp and short. As you raise your hands, the mics will come to you. If you don't get an opportunity, that is okay. Anand Seshadri is an engineer turned strategy professional working in the areas of organizational excellence and supply chain. A Sikha who loves cows, he is passionate about researching, writing, teaching Bharatiya history, culture and tradition. After more than a decade of traveling outside the country, he returned to the home turf to follow his inner calling. Yashaswini is a public policy consultant working on government advisory projects. She is an economics graduate from the University of Delhi. and has worked on rural development projects at panchayat level with women and tribal communities. She later served as a legislative and research aide to a member of the parliament in the Rajya Sabha. Yashaswini has been associated with the Chinmaya mission for over 15 years and is also the sub-editor of Chinmaya Mission's international youth magazine, Chinmaya Udghosh. Please put your hands together for our moderators and panelists. I now hand over the wheel to our moderators.
Hari Om. Yeah. So it was such an invigorating discussion to start off with. And I was just thinking about the names that Dr. Vikram Sampath had mentioned. Lalita Aditya, Suhail Dev, Rani Abaka. Forget being mentioned in the history book. They never even came up as quiz questions. Right? It was not even a challenge for the intellectuals. It was so marginalized, so sidelined, and we were so colonized. Like, our mindsets are so colonized. So I'll begin with this question to Dr. Vikram ji. What is the consequences of decolonizing the Indian mind or the Bharatiya mind? Right? What is the consequence in the sense, how does it affect me at the individual level? What happens to the society where the mind is decolonized? And what happens to the nation which is decolonized at the intellectual level?
That's a fantastic question. And I think world over, a lot of other nations which were colonized, Latin America, Africa, even China to a large extent, have started taking this narrative back. When we talk of decolonization, it is not a narrative against someone. It is not xenophobia. It is not hatred for some other, whatever happened in the past, whoever colonized us, whoever invaded us, it's not a sense of hatred towards them. It is only taking the power back in your hands, saying my story will be told my way. And it will not be through lexicons, through vocabulary, through terminologies that someone else imposes on you, which is what, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, colonization forces you to do, forces you to think also in the way you are told to think. So the fundamental way is opening up the mind to actually look at yourself in the way you want, look at yourself with confidence, with pride. Now there's a very, very thin line between jingoism and with genuine pride. In fact, some years back I was talking to Rohan Murthy, who had formed the Murthy Classical Library. He used to tell me as a student in one of the US universities, when several of his other Orientalist, those students who came from Oriental countries, Japan, China, Asia, etc. So they, when in discussions, they'd say, what is it about your country that you're very proud of? Most of them would have something to answer. And he would tell me that genuinely a lot of us Indians would have to think very hard. Acha, we discovered zero. Vague things here and there. Beyond that, we really do not know what, for thousands of years, as a knowledge-seeking society, as Vivek ji mentioned, did our ancestors not do anything? So that genuine sense of pride which would come into yourself in the, your contributions in multiple fields. It could be philosophy, linguistics, language, spirituality, metallurgy, chemistry, mathematics, medicine, astronomy, all of these, your traditional knowledge systems, a sense of pride and ownership about all that. It's an astonishing fact. A few years ago, there was this news report, I think 2017 or so, the South Asia Institute in Heidelberg University, they were flooded with so many applications for learning Sanskrit there that they had to open multiple centers in other countries, including Ireland and all these other places. 14 top universities in Germany teach Sanskrit. And there is a mad rush for people there to learn this language. But contrast that to the country of its origin. The minute you include Sanskrit, it will bring in Brahminical patriarchy, saffronization, toxic education, all kinds of nonsense where we throw the baby away with the bathwater. And in the process, the genuine knowledge that has been developed in this part of the world, which is very unique to the Indian ethos, we are losing sight of that. So decolonization of the mind would address all of these issues, and it And a human being, individual is just one unit of the larger microcosm of the country. So if every individual is transformed, the society is also transformed thereby, and so is the nation. So that sense of self-confidence, that sense of pride, that sense of being able to look back at your own past. Of course there were problems, of course there was oppression, there was casteism, there was, which society in the world is ideal? Every society had some problem or the other, but despite that, what have been our genuine achievements? I think that is the route that decolonization would provide.
Thanks, Vikramji. So I think it is not out to say that, we need to be very, very proud of our country. So I'm just going to, try and keep a question to Vivekji, something a little more crisper, because I think we have Pratik actually saying that questions need to be crisp. And I don't mean to offend anybody, but Vivekji, are movies replacing history textbooks? History textbooks.
I hope it doesn't happen. I don't think movies can ever or should not should replace them. But movies are a very powerful medium. It's very sad. I really feel sad that in India, we look down upon movies. And for that, people are not to be blamed, the filmmakers are to be blamed. I'll tell you how. Movies are a reflection of any society's growth, evolution. When the World War happened, then CIA, along with the White House, had a deal with Hollywood. And they invested billions of dollars to, the CIA said, is it possible to use Hollywood as soft power? And since then, if you see, Hollywood has been using their movies as a soft power of America. You ask any child, even here, ask any child, in any country of the world, educated child, uneducated child, a child sitting in Africa with no clothes, no food. If you ask which is the greatest country in the world, the unanimous answer all over the world is USA. Without even going there, without even learning about it, without knowing anything about US, everybody in the world says USA. And in most of the world, if you say, okay, if you have to migrate to one country, where you want to go? Every child wants to go to USA. Because in movies, everybody is going to USA. USA is the hero of this world. Because they have told stories how USA protects the world. How USA protects freedom and democracy and liberty. Which may be true to an extent, but ask Libya, ask Syria, ask Vietnam, ask Cambodia, ask Africa, ask anybody in this world. Go and ask people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki how they protect it. Ask all those homeless people in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley, how they protect it. Being rich has become synonym of protecting freedom and liberty and equal rights. Very proud of Shri Jaishankar. He said that if you tell us about human rights, we'll also tell you about human rights. The whole world is upset with the Kashmir files. And I'm very proud of it. Thousands and thousands of books have been written on Kashmir. It's not, if somebody says, oh, we didn't know. No. That's your problem. You didn't know because you don't read. Nobody in schools and colleges are asking you to read. I have got a room full of books on Kashmir and Kashmir genocide. Every Kashmiri Pandit has written something. Well-published books, if not well-published, some articles, something, they have written. For 32 years they kept this alive. But one film. See, I'll tell you, this is very interesting to understand the power of cinema. Because cinema is the only art which has all the dimensions. You have audio, visual, plus you have depth. And it is collective viewing. So some kinds of vibes are also traveling and transferring so that there is some kind of a consensus whether this is right or wrong. That's the science of cinema, very simply spoken. Before the release of the film, not even one person from media was willing to talk to me. I went to USA and I was literally begging that Boston Globe or Time or CNN or somebody at least looks at it. In fact, I went to the extent of talking to one very big journalist in Washington Post, an Indian. And I said, you keep writing about Holocaust, you write about Rwandan genocide, you write about Armenian genocide, you call things which are not even genocide, you call them genocide. Every day you are writing about Muslim genocide in India. Then please look at this genocide, talk about it. Nobody was willing to talk. I was literally begging. In India, I called everybody in every channel that this film is coming, give it some due respect. You talk about humanity. Every single night, for so many years, you have created TRPs talking about Kashmir. And today when a genuine film is coming on Kashmir, you are not talking. But nobody was willing. So we had no option. So we took the film and showed it to people like you, door to door in USA and everywhere. Then in India, I started traveling, showing it to film to common people. Once the film came, since then, my phone has not stopped ringing. Yesterday, I realized that it's been more than one month. It's like almost 1.5 months now. Film has done its course of theaters. I should move on. And I just wrote a tweet. And I went to the studio after writing. When I came out after 2 hours, there were 150 missed calls. All calls from media. In last 10 days, you name it, CNN, Time, New York Times, Washington Post, Al Jazeera, you name everybody. Everybody has spoken to me, taken my interviews. I talk about humanity. But their headlines talk about Islamophobia. That's fine. You do whatever you have to do. You bring my thing in conversation. This is the power of movies. Holocaust. Nobody called the genocide of Jews Holocaust before 1979 or 78. I don't remember, but late 70s. Before that, it was never called Holocaust. Some American made a documentary called Holocaust. And it released in Germany. And there were violent discourses, conversations, debates. People came out on the street. There was a lot of upheaval. There were lots of problems. The society went into conflict. But once that matter was settled, today, if they say 60 million people were killed in Holocaust, nobody questions and says, were they 58 million or 60 million? When Spielberg makes Schindler's List, nobody in the world has the guts to even question whether there was anybody called Schindler or not. No. The world has realized that if such mass-scale torture and violence has taken place on the basis of a race or a faith or regionality, the entire humanity should be ashamed of it. No questions asked. There should be zero tolerance. But the problem today is, you must have read about Elon Musk. I am going into detail because you have to understand this politics. You read about Elon Musk yesterday. He made a vulgar offer and he said he wants to buy Twitter. Which was the first tweet which came, no, you cannot? Saudi Arabia's king. Because they have invested most. All these New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, I'm taking names. They are all funded by Middle Eastern money. In America, lobbying is legal. I have practiced recently in last 6 months, I have practiced. You can go and give $5,000 to $10,000, $5,000 to a senator or a congressman to meet him, another $5,000 to $10,000 to tweet, to make him tweet about your issue, and you pay him few hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars, he'll become an activist of your cause. This is why in America, everybody is talking about Islamophobia. AOC took it to the Congress, and Congress approved that bill. And soon it will come into the Senate, it will become a law in America. Trust me. Because American policy makers have no spine, all they need is money. It's the Middle East which is ruling American policies. Now, I want all the young people, next time when somebody says, no, in Kashmir, 4,000 people died, or 3,900 died, or 400 died, you say you are Hindu-phobic. It is important. In the modern world, we cannot be always, look at our body language, we are with droopy shoulders, we are always saying, no, please listen to me, no. You have to make the world listen to you, understand about the greatness of your country and the injustice which is being done to us. And I think to do that, take this message forward, I think movies are very, very strong medium.
Thank you so much, Vivek ji. Just not for this answer, but for the movie Kashmir Files itself. There's been one of the biggest things that Kashmir Files has done is bring the conversation of Kashmir, which was earlier a taboo, back into our living rooms, right? And you've also done painful research behind it, like validating it with interviews of around 600, 700 Kashmiri Hindu families is no mean task. And for each of them to recount their own horrors, and for you to empathize with it and portray it in such a sensitive manner, it's a huge, huge feat indeed. But we don't want that conversation to end with this movie. We don't want it to end with the movie anchored on an ending of Article 370 being abrogated. But that is done now. What is the future to keep this conversation going? How can I bring back the talk about, let's say, Kalhana's Rajatarangini? How can I encourage people to visit Martanda Sun Temple like how they would visit Konark Temple in Orissa? Why is it different? What is the future for the conversation of Kashmir in India, I mean in Bharat?
See, this now what happens is, once the conversation begins, then it finds many, many dimensions. Now people will write about it, media will talk about it, students will also inquire about it, they will inquire, they learn, they would want to go there. The greatest thing which has happened is that it has united people all over the world, all Hindus, I would say, to start with. But I'm sure very soon, a lot of people from different faiths and ethnicity will also become a part of it. How it goes forward, British Parliament has invited me and Pallavi in the month of June, and in House of Lords. So we are going there. Then the Human Rights Commission has invited our film for screening. We are going there. I requested Madhya Pradesh government, we told them we don't need even one penny, just give us suitable land in the capital of Madhya Pradesh, Bhopal, to build a genocide museum. And like somebody was saying just now, this museum is not about to inspire you about genocide, but make you learn the great value of humanity and Bharatiya style of humanity. That is the concept of oneness. That's the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. When you feel that everybody is part of our family, you don't feel violent towards anybody. And the biggest evil or enemy of humanity today is terrorism. Why is it not even once in our film we use the word Muslim or Pakistan? Not even once, you can see it again. We just spoke about terrorism. then why all the intellectuals of the world are calling it Islamophobic? Which means somewhere in their minds, they connect terrorism with Islam. I am not saying it. In my film, most of the unit is Muslim. All those Hindu characters you have seen, Karan and so many, they are all Muslim actors because you're shooting in Kashmir. Where do you get the actors from? I have no problems with that. But in their minds, they are associating Islam with terrorism. And a lot of people are trying to do it with us also. I want the entire world to, when they think about Hindu, they should think about humanity and oneness. This is what I think we need to do, take this conversation to that level.
Thank you, Vivek ji. My next question is actually for Vikram ji, right? I'm just going to try and see if I can set the context for the people here. So just bear with me. So Vivek ji, Vikram ji has written books on, the royal family of Mysore, about very famous musicians. But, it's only in the recent past when Vikram ji wrote about Savarkar that we started hearing a lot about him. And especially a well-researched, articulate, objective historian is suddenly called by many other labels. So when such labels get attached to your work, especially, because I'm sure that's what kind of brings everything to the fore, how do you actually respond to these labels?
By not responding, perhaps. But, that's an interesting question because most often we talk about the work, we never talk about the person who's done the work and what goes through. There's that famous Sahir Ludhianvi couplet which says, "Jo saaz se nikli hai, wo dhun sabne suni hai, but jo taar pe guzri hai, wo kisko pata hai." We've all heard the music coming from the instrument, but what goes on the strings on which it is played, how many people really bother to know about that? I have been the target of so many, vituperative attacks, not now, but almost for the last 15, 16 years. My first book, you said, was on the history of Mysore, and in that, of course, there is this very difficult episode of, the interregnum period of Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. And every time a discussion around that is made, Tipu Sultan is again this holy cow you cannot touch. And in my own state, in Karnataka, there is even Tipu Jayanti being celebrated by the previous government. I don't know if someone somewhere is going to celebrate Hitler Jayanti also, because it is very similar to that. He was, to a large extent, a tyrant who murdered thousands and thousands of Hindus, Mandya Mayangars, Syrian Christians, Kodavas, Mangalorians, Nayars of Kerala, all of them. But so in one such incident, it was in 2008, I was still relatively much younger, and it was my first book, and I was giving a talk on Tipu Sultan, and in an auditorium like this, there were some people who came into the gathering, and I was actually referring to letters written by Tipu himself, to his officers, saying, go to Malabar and, destroy XYZ temples, convert so many Nayars into Islam, and this sword which is there, it should be drenched with the blood of the kafir, and all kinds of things like that. So while I was reading this out, there was a huge uproar. People started shouting slogans. There were paper rockets that were thrown at the podium. The talk had to be disbanded in the middle. My father was sitting in the first row, and so I was ushered away. And my father was told by one of the people who came there and said, "You have only one son, so if you want him to live long, you know what to do." And you can imagine the kind of, tremors that would have caused at home. My mother took a vow from me that from now on, you're not going to talk about Tipu Sultan ever again in public. But then today, she's no more, but I've broken my vow to my mother in the larger hope of the Mother India, Mother Bharati, that my next book is going to be on Tipu Sultan, a biography. Because I think that truth needs to be told. So I think history has become such a landmine. It is so difficult to deal with these topics. We have, and it's very strange, we as a country have so little regard for, monuments can go crumbling, documentation is not done, we don't mind that. But characters of the past are made into these touch me not, no-go areas, and any discussion around them leads to this kind of an uproar. My effigy that time was also burnt in the heart of Bangalore, in MG Road, and in front of a media, news office. And the editor of the newspaper called me saying, what do we do? I said, you just take a photo and send it to me. I'll make it those days it was Orkut. So Orkut profile picture was my effigy being burned. So I think that is the way to react to these kind of, because otherwise, if you are faint-hearted, you cannot make the Kashmir Files. You cannot write books like this. You cannot even talk because you can only write politically correct things. You can make politically correct films, romantic comedies, chick licks. This is all that will be safe. You will also get a lot of, recognition and all of that. Now, when it comes to Savarkar, there also I knew the landmine that I was entering, even while I began the journey 5 years ago. And because there's a history to him. No person in the past, in our recent past, has become such a persona non grata as Savarkar has been made to, suffer. Someone none less than the eminence of Pandit Hridaynath Mangeshkar ji, the brother of Lata Mangeshkar, Bharat Ratna Lata Mangeshkar ji. In the 1960s, 70s, he was working in the All India Radio. And Savarkar, in addition to being a great ideologue, was also a fantastic Marathi poet. So he wrote several poems, Ne Majasi Ne Parat Matra Bhumila, Sagara Pran Talmalala, then Jayostute Shri Mahan Mangale, Shivaspade Shubhade, Swatantrate Bhagavati Twamaham Yasho Yutam Vande. So all these poems that he wrote in Marathi, Hridaynath ji, who was working in All India Radio, he tuned those poems, and Lata ji, Asha ji, all of them, all the sisters, they sang it. It's on YouTube for people to see. And for this crime that he did, Hridaynath ji got a show cause notice from All India Radio saying, explain why you picked this poem. And in a very matter of fact, he's on record stating it, that he sent a 2-line reply saying, good poem, great poet. That is reason enough to tune it. But All India Radio was not to take this. In 8 days, he was thrown out, sacked from his job. So this was the level of, today we talk of intolerance in our society and all of that. If this is tolerance, where just for the crime of picking up the poem of somebody whom you don't like or who is not part of the mainstream political system, someone remotely associated with that person has to pay a heavy price of losing their job. I knew what I was entering into. So in the last 6 months, 7 months, the kind of attacks, not only nationally, but as many people know, internationally, there's been so much of, I'm very happy, like Vivek ji said, sometimes when they ignore you, you know that you have not hit them where it hurts most. When they sit up and take notice and even start attacking you, it's actually a victory that, you have hit the raw nerve somewhere. So all kinds of slander, all kinds of allegations, you are called names, you may not be affiliated to any political party, but you say, yeah, you're on the paycheck. I don't know where these paychecks are going, if they're coming from somewhere. So you're on someone's payroll, you are this and that, and so many new labels that have come, for which I have also taken judicial recourse. So all these things keep happening. But as I said, history is not for the faint-hearted, at least in India. One has to have a strong, resolve that despite all these attacks, you are going to tell the truth. And the truth has a certain power in it, which will give you the strength to face all these attacks. That will shield you from all these attacks. And I truly believe in that.
So we'll quickly open the floor to the audience. We might take just 1 or 2 questions. So anybody who wants to ask a question, kindly raise your hand. Our volunteer will reach out to you with a mic. Okay, there is this person. Just give your name. No, here, Rohini. Just give your name and what you do, and please stick only to the question. Yeah.
Good morning. This is Dr. Geeta Iyer. My question is to Dr. Vikram Sampath, an observation and a question. I think you were blessed to be kneeling outside the history class because you probably escaped the psychological subjugation that we were all exposed to, that we had to unlearn over the years. My question is, have we been too silent? And is it time for us to now become vocal about what we believe in as our history, our past, and to be a proud Bharatiya?
Excellent question. I think you're right. We have for the longest time been silent for various reasons. There was no facilitation, there was no ecosystem. The manner in which the creative fields, whether it's the media, the arts, the fine arts, academia, these have been under the thraldom of a particular ideology. In the Kashmir Files, there's that famous dialogue that the government may be theirs, but the system is ours. So I think that is very, very true, that even to this day, irrespective of the political dispensation, the capture of systems, and this is not just of India, even in America. A couple of years ago in 2016, there was a news article in New York Times by Nicholas Kristof, who was a journalist, who'd written that, even in academia, media and arts in the US, the capture by the so-called liberal, leftist liberals, though I don't know why you hyphenate left and liberal when left has never been liberal anywhere in the world, right from Soviet Russia to China to any place that where it's ruled, or even in states in India. So the capture by the leftists has ensured that only 6 to 11% of US universities are of conservative thought. So when you actually entrench yourself so deep into the system, you are the gatekeepers. You ensure that anybody who does not come within your worldview is not entertained. Careers have been destroyed in India of people who have held a different viewpoint compared to the mainstream. This whole peer review cabal, which ensures that, I slap your back, you slap my back, and we all form this cozy club. Fellowships are given, foreign assignments, all these lucrative lures that are given to ensure that, you are all a cozy club, that privileged club. And these are the same people who talk about Brahminical privilege and all of that. So because of that, the capture was so intense that people have been silent, as you mentioned. But today, thanks to so many things, one is a political environment also which facilitates different viewpoints, and also most importantly, social media, which puts a megaphone. It has its disadvantages, it also has its pros, which is it puts a megaphone on every person. There was that Twitter handle, True Indology, which got repeatedly suspended. This person, established historians could be demolished with facts and figures by this person. Of course, not the best way to do. You finally need to write a book, you need to research, you need to document it, put a film together. Twitter is very ephemeral, it will go away tomorrow morning. But then still, challenging the status quo. Before, whatever we say, that is the Veda, Veda Vakya, and nobody can challenge that. That was the system before. But today, everyone is able to poke holes. One of these eminent historians, they put out some Twitter thing where there's that painting of Krishna pointing to the moon, and all of them, all the gopis and gopas going somewhere, and they said, look, this was actually done during the Mughal period, where he's showing the Eid ka Chand, and so how Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb and all kinds of nonsense like this, whereas actually I think it was True Indology who punctured holes in that entire picture, that it was a Rajasthani miniature that was not being shown, that it was a photoshopped image of that Eid ka Chand that was put. It was actually, they were showing Nanda's house or going towards that direction or something like that. So imagine the angst of that established tenured professor and a historian, that a chit of a boy or a girl is able to challenge you based on facts, and that is what riles them. But I think now that awareness has come, and this will go beyond a party, a prime minister, a political leader. it's crossed that stage. Just one instance, we had that infamous and horrific, conference, hate conference that was organized, dismantling global Hindutva, where it started saying that Hinduism and Hindutva are different and we need to dismantle Hindutva. But by the third day, all the speakers were saying Hinduism is the root cause of Hindutva, and so Hinduism itself needs to be eradicated. Now, if you saw the government or even the RSS and others, they kept quiet about it. But the outrage and the campaign against that hate conference was led by common Hindus, common Indians, common Hindus in the US, groups that started getting formed, started getting organized. So I think the movement has begun, which goes beyond politics, politicians, individual leaders or so. And that's a great thing. So people, once you start pushing back and giving that resistance, that thus far and no further, I think then the tide is soon to turn.
Question is for Vivek ji. Now that the Kashmiri files have come, it's like you've just mixed the whole thing up and everybody has become aware. People who never knew or heard of it, even those who were born before the 90s, never knew anything, and today everybody is aware. Now the next thing is, have you given thought? I know this is not part of your job, but however, have you given thought as to how we can get the Hindus back into Kashmir in a very organized and safe manner, as would be the thought of those that you have interviewed, those 700 plus people that you have interviewed? Have you heard some suggestions from him, and do you yourself have a thought as how we'll get them back? Because that land of Kashyapa Muni does require this nourishment to bring it back to some semblance of what Kashmir actually should be, or the valley at least should be.
Okay, thanks a lot. See, I can answer in two ways. Number one, I'm just a storyteller. I'm not a policy maker. I'm not an army. I'm not the government, so I can't do anything beyond that. But I'll tell you what I'm doing in my own capacity. This is not the end. This is just the beginning. We are making a web series on the history of Kashmir, which is already in the pipeline. And next year, probably early next year, we are planning to release a big documentary in theaters on the same thing. See, the only way, as I understand, what is the problem in Kashmir? Kashmir, the problem is that some people with guns have forcefully entered it. Now they want to establish their faith over there, which is primarily Islam. Primarily what this is, only Islam. Therefore, nobody feels secure going to Kashmir. So there are two things which need to be done. A, Kashmir has to become part of mainstream narrative, number one. Number two, the demography needs to change. Why we live together, despite so many religions, faiths, languages. Even in Chennai, you will see that there are people from different cultures, different places. They live together. Everywhere in India, people live together because there is diversity. Problem with Kashmir is that they have destroyed diversity. Just to give you an example, we were shooting, and it's something which makes me very sad. In fact, if you ask me which is the saddest story out of all the stories I have heard, 700 people we have interviewed, but everybody has told us tens of stories, so our database is very huge. We were shooting in Srinagar, in Dal Lake. The Pallavi was acting, my wife, Pallavi Joshi ji was acting. The camera was on a different boat. So we change lenses and camera, so we take 5-minute break or something like that. And in that shot, there were some young girls, 5 to 7 year old, two girls who were supposed to be with Pallavi. And they were sitting next to her. So when we took a break, that time was azan time or something like that, or the prayer namaz time. So one of the little 5-year-old girl asked Pallavi, "Where do you go for namaz?" Pallavi said, "No, I don't go anywhere for namaz." She said, "Why?" She said, because I am not a Muslim. I am a Hindu. The little girl said, so what? Everybody has to go for namaz. Now look at this 5-year-old girl, neither she's a terrorist nor she's a terrorist child. She's an innocent young girl who's going to learn about the world. But she has no idea that there can be other faiths. There can be diversity. Today if you go in Kashmir Valley, there is zero diversity. There is no art, no literature, no music. In the name of music, you just have azan. No dance. Such a culturally rich, no philosophy. See, the biggest problem, my grudge with Islam is that it destroys philosophy. Wherever they go, there is no philosophy. So there is no philosophy in Kashmir. There's no dialogue in Kashmir. This is it. So anybody who's born after 1990s, they have no idea that they're different, the flora and fauna, the cultural flora and fauna. There is no spirituality in the seat of spirituality. Unless that is changed. And I have a feeling that it is changing. Demography is slowly changing. Culture is slowly coming back, very slowly, but it is coming back. Lots and lots of Kashmiri Muslim boys and girls have sent me messages after seeing the film. They said, sir, we did not even know that cinema halls existed in Kashmir. Can you do something so that we get Kashmir cinema halls back? Which is a good sign. At least they are thinking about it. Another great sign is that all Kashmiri Muslim youth, when I've been there many times in last 5 years, many times. No wonder there are so many fatwas issued on my name. Every time I go, they issue a fatwa. So, the greatest positive sign is that before this film, they used to own terrorism. And they would say Pakistan has nothing to do with it. We want a free Kashmir and we are doing whatever. They didn't want to share any credit with Pakistan. But after this film, they are saying, no, it's not us. It was all Pakistan. So that is a little shift in their thinking. But I think governments have their own compulsions. Governments go with whatever the masses are talking about. But as Indians, as Hindus, as the citizens of this great civilization, I'll tell you what we can do. If we, instead of focusing on the weaknesses, if all of us start writing about the greatness of Kashmir and how it is an integral part of India, and fill the entire digital space, social media, with the greatness, and why this greatness is because we are one and we are together. Trust me, it will take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but your children will definitely be able to go back and live in Kashmir.
Thank you, Vivek ji, for that brilliant answer. I now request a token of gratitude to be handed over to both our panelists. I request Swamiji to hand over a token of gratitude first to Vikram Sampath ji, Swamiji to Vivek ji. Thank you so much, Swamiji.
Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om
Jana Gana Mana Adhinayaka Jaya He Bharata Bhagya Vidhata
Punjab Sindhu Gujarat Maratha Dravida Utkala Vanga Vindhya Himachala Yamuna Ganga Uchchala Jalasitaranga Tava Shubha Name Jahe Tava Shubha Ashisha Mage Gahe Tava Jaya Gata जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 जय